I think we're live. Yeah, I think we're live. Hello, everybody. So, as you know, well, hopefully you know that this live is about nature and self-care. We're going to be talking about how plants can contribute to your well-being or improve it. We're going to be talking with Ashley Edwards, a horticultural therapist and a self-proclaimed plant zaddy. So, I'm going to wait until he joins for a bit and then send him the request. Oh, there he is. What is going on? Accept. Ah, there he is. Hello, Ashley.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you good. Can you hear me good? This is
Yes.
good. Yes. All right. So, yeah, and happy Father's Day, Mr. Plant Daddy.
Yeah, I've been spending time with all my plant babies today.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good. All right. So, as I said earlier, we're here talking about nature and self-care. We're going to be talking about how plants can contribute or improve your well-being. So, first of all, Ashley, just let everybody know, what you do, what's your day-to-day life like in your job, and so on.
Yeah, so at the moment I'm head gardener for a charity, a national charity called Horatius Garden, and we build gardens for spinal injury centres across the UK, and these are NHS centres. So it provides a sanctuary really for people who have spinal injury, a place where they can process what's happened to them, and just allow yourself space to just think really, because in the hospital it's very crowded. You don't have any privacy. You're separated by a blue curtain, and that's about it really. And then to be able to get outside and like have that privacy and process everything that's happened, that's really important. So my job is I'm head gardener, so I look after the garden, and I also have a team of volunteers that help me look after the garden. So we can't really do it without the volunteers. They're brilliant. And then managing the garden day to day, and then also doing garden therapy sessions. So I will run therapy sessions one to one, and people who are maybe not even ever done gardening before can come out and they can like spend an hour with me, and we'll do some gardening. And the idea is that it increases people's well-being and just lets them forget about them being in hospital for a while. So yeah, it's really a really fulfilling job. I get to work with plants. Like my whole career, I've been a gardener, horticulturalist, and so this is a really great job for me because I get to do gardening, but also share that with people as well. So yeah, so I really like that aspect of my job. Yeah, that's my job in a nutshell, really.
Yeah, that's good. And I know you said that you like that aspect, but what's your favorite part of this job in
I
general?
think for me, it's about connecting people to nature, and a lot of people that I work with, they've never had the opportunity before because maybe they don't have a garden themselves, or a lot of my patients are from London, so they are, they have limited access to green space. Although London's great for parks, not everybody has that access. So it's like amazing to be able to work with people, see them develop throughout their stay at the hospital. So uh, what I've what I've loved in the past is seeing patients, starting with very little hand function because they have a spinal injury, so their mobility is affected, and starting with like very small seeds, for example, like peas and bean seeds. Start with the larger ones, and then working our way down to the smaller seeds, and that's been like amazing to see that progress in people. So yeah, I think that's probably my favorite part of the job, like seeing people improve, seeing people just generally really enjoying the garden, like a lot of people just sitting out in the garden. I love that, and I love connecting people to nature. I think it's so important, and I think it's becoming more and more important, and people are losing that connection now. And I think it's so important to be able to reconnect people because we're all part of nature and we're all intertwined, and it's easy to forget that. And so it's nice to remind
Especially
people.
with your day-to-day life and in a place like London where it's just kind of like clockwork. it's like, okay, work, home, tubes, then home, and so on.
Yeah,
So you can definitely get caught up in that and you forget that link. Especially, I mean, life is pretty green, but you know, it's not as green as like can be. So you still can lose that connection. Then.
mm, mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, definitely. And oops, sorry. Yeah, and also, you know, people kind of get used to disconnecting themselves from nature, and especially with food that we eat, we don't always know where it comes from, and
yeah.
people often don't know how to grow a tomato plant or how to grow, uh, you know, a lettuce and where it actually comes from. And so to be able to show people vegetable growing, I really enjoy that as well because it's something that they can then pick up and take home themselves and hopefully like carry that on.
And it's so important to know where your food comes from too, because I mean, as you said, especially with a lot of these food now, you don't really know where it's coming from. You don't know what's in it, and you don't know how
Yeah,
those chemicals affect you
great.
personally or just really because it's just so processed. You know, it comes from a factory, and they have all these preservatives that you have to add in. You know, whereas if you know exactly, you know, you go to a garden here, you go to like a farmer's market, you can get something that's fresh, and you know that all right, you know. I mean, the worst that could possibly happen is like pesticides, in some cases GMO. But I mean, at least it's still
Yeah.
a bit more controlled, and you understand and you know where it's coming from and what it is and so on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely agree. But in your job for yourself, obviously, you'd be in contact with plants a lot. So how do you find it's been affecting you personally, being in contact with plants so much?
I think like my whole life I've had an interest in nature and gardening and plants, and that has really helped ground me. And I think that being in that cycle of seasons, seeing spring, summer, autumn, winter, and kind of always planning ahead, so like sowing seeds for the spring or planting bulbs that will flower next year, you're always kind of looking ahead into the future. And when you plant a seed or a bulb, it's kind of planting a little piece of hope that, you know, next year this is going to flower, this is going to become something. And I think it gives you something to look forward to next year. So when I plant bulbs in the autumn, like doing that really helps me get through winter because I hate winter.
Yeah,
And like knowing
I
that,
hate
I
winter.
know you can
Absolutely.
agree there. And like in spring, knowing that we're going to have flowers emerging from the bulbs that we planted last year, like that gives me a lot of hope. Um, but yeah, just being like grounded with nature in the seasons, in the rhythms, and like me personally, like I often experience anxiety, so like being able to focus on a task, a gardening task, really helps clear my mind. And after I've done like a whole day of weeding or watering or whatever it is, I often feel much better. I just feel like my mind is cleared. I've been able to process as I'm working and switch off from, you know, all my devices. So that I find really helpful. Definitely.
There's aspects of like mindfulness that comes with gardening and being around plants and so on.
I didn't really catch that one.
No, no,
You're-
there's an aspect of mindfulness that comes around
Yes,
gardening and being around
exactly. Yeah, and you know, it's not just about the plants. It's about like being in that environment and like seeing birds and insects and really like focusing on the small things. And that is all mindfulness. And that's, you know, that's the most mindful you can be, really. Just focusing on this, on these little insects that have their own lives, their own doing their own thing, and you're just like there observing them. And it really grounds you, and you realize how small you are really in the whole universe.
That's true. That's so true. So I mean, as you know, I'm pretty big on self-care. I'm like pushing out self-care narratives and so on. So I just want to gauge. I mean, so far we've seen how it can benefit, just like well-being and so on. But what are some ways that being in nature? You already mentioned mindfulness. So what are some other ways that being in nature can help with self-care? What are some other aspects of being in nature that do help with anyone's self-care? Because I know you do work with patients who, you know, they're probably injured and they're probably like, you know, otherwise would have been in a hospital setting, but for like just the general person, you know, it might not be injured or anything. How can it help that person's self-care?
I guess a big part of it is the mindfulness and being engaged in a process which distracts you from maybe pain, or maybe you're feeling really low, and for a moment you can kind of just forget all those thoughts that are going on.
Yeah.
So that's a major part of it. But I think for anyone in general, like being able to go out into nature for 15 minutes a day, even that it will really boost your mental health. So that one self-care tip would be to just take a walk in your local green space. If you don't have a garden, hopefully you live near a green space, although we do need to make more effort to create more green spaces in London for a lot of communities that could benefit from it the most. They don't have access to it, so it's really important that the importance of green space is recognized for people's mental health. And I think, during lockdown, we all realized that it was the only thing we could do was to get out into the garden or go out to the park. And that was our self-care routine, like going out every day. And it was, for a lot of people, that was the first time they've ever done that. And I think the benefits were really huge. But yeah, so I think going out, taking a walk, like being very observant, so being mindful and observant, trying not to use your phone while you're in the woods or in the park, and just seeing what you can spot, because once you start looking, you'll be amazed at what you actually see.
Yeah.
All sorts of, birds, insects, all sorts of interesting flowers, and you'll start to really engage with nature. And yeah, that's one easy thing you can do for your own self-care. Also, just, growing your own vegetables. I mean, if you do have the space, and you can grow stuff, on your windowsill, you could grow salad leaves, microgreens, you could do herbs. Just doing that is going to add to your self-care, because you can improve your diet by growing your own food. And like you said before, it's growing organic food without pesticides, knowing where it's come from, and yeah, cutting down your CO2 emissions, like by growing your own food. All of this would, greatly benefit you in the long run. So if you can, that's a great thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. And it's so funny how just like a simple thing like gardening or growing your own thing can affect so many aspects of your life. Where like you grow your own vegetables and so on, so it's healthier for you, but at the same time it's helping the environment, cutting down the CO2 emissions and just kind of cutting down that processing process that you could say, and helping with CO2 emissions. So it's just kind of like a holistic improvement that getting into gardening and growing your own stuff actually does help with. So I'm glad that you touched on gardening, improving your diet and so on. Are there any other physical benefits to being in nature and to gardening that you probably can think about?
Yeah, I mean, going to like gardening is in some ways even better than going to the gym, because it's very like low impact exercise. You can adapt it to your needs. So just the physical activity of gardening is brilliant, and getting that fresh air. Digging can burn a lot of calories. Using hedge trimmers can use a lot of calories. So it is a real physical workout, gardening. And yeah, being outdoors in fresh air is really brilliant, because we live in London, the air quality is not great. It's good to try and get to a park or somewhere where you can get a bit of fresh air.
Especially after just being under the tubes all day.
Yeah,
It's
gross.
great.
It's pretty gross. So yeah, so you could walk, right? If you can. Like the other day, I walked from like, where were we? King's Cross to Regent's Park along the canal, and that was lovely. Much better than getting the tube. So if you can, try and walk in nature. And also, you'll get vitamin D from sunlight, which is really important for us, for our immune systems. And yeah, there's just so many physical benefits. It will actually lower your blood pressure in a lot of cases. It can reduce your stress hormones. People have reported that it increases your sleep. So spend, you know, when you're out and you go on a hike and you get all that fresh air, you come home, you like sleep so well. That will help you.
Yeah, true. And when it comes to being in nature and gardening, and just that direct physical benefit that it can have, I always like thinking about aromatherapy and
Mm,
chromotherapy. So I know that there's certain plants that, you know, when you're being around them a lot and you're smelling them and just inhaling whatever they give off, they are like the essential oils that they give off. It's
mm,
it's very beneficial, you know, because for example, I know for lavender, being around lavender,
yeah,
having lavender, you can help with things like stress
yeah,
relief, can help with, as you said, I mean, can also help with the sleep. After a long hike, you probably come in and you probably have a lavender plant over there that can also help with the sleep as well. And when it comes to chromotherapy, I know just seeing green a lot can help boost just general well-being. So that's another thing that I think can help when it comes out to physical health,
yeah,
being in nature and well-being as well. So I
yeah.
mean, do you find that at least? And do you know any more plants that probably have pretty good aromatherapy benefits that, you know, anybody could have or anybody could
Mm.
just grow?
Well, there's so many you could grow. Like lavender is a great one because it helps you relax and it's very good for sleep. And you can use it as put it into massage oil, and it's really nice. It will relax you. But you can use things like thyme, which is another great herb, and that's really good for sore throats. So if you have a sore throat, you can make tea with thyme. Um, there's rosemary, which is another great herb used for cooking, but it also has um, it, it it's said to, I don't know if there's like strong research behind it, but improve memory. So that's one for rosemary. Um, but yeah, you could grow like a whole range of herbs and use those in your cooking, but also just like sitting out in an evening, being able to smell the herbs. It's another way to engage in nature, and you know, smelling sweet smells, it's going to make you feel better. It's you know, you don't need to be having that to know that.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I think growing a range of herbs and being able to just pick them and add them to your food. I mean, that's amazing.
that's it for real. So moving from physical benefits to more mental benefits. So, for example, people with anxiety, depression, other mental illnesses like that, being in nature obviously would be, by this point we can say it would be pretty good to help patients like that. Do you get patients like that at all in your practice? You know, patients with like probably serious or debilitating mental health issues that you as a therapist come into the healthcare team to help them.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, a lot of people, when they first come into the hospital, aren't in the great space mentally. And so, I mean, the hospital staff are incredible and help them a lot with that. And they have psychiatrists on board and everything. But yeah, people will often be referred to the garden and garden activities to improve their mental health, because it will just make you feel better just being outside and out of that hospital environment. That's going to improve your health. So yeah, we do have a lot of patients like that. And I think, like I said before, it's just good to be able to concentrate on one task and forget about everything else for a while. And I think having a chat as well, really, because when we work, we'll be chatting as well and just having a nice conversation. Most of my conversations about food because my sessions are like before and after lunch, so it's either like talking about what we're going to eat or what we've just eaten. But yeah, it's nice to talk about something non-medical, um, and people really open up. You know, they say a lot because they feel comfortable in a garden or outside. It's like just an open environment, so you automatically just feel more open to talk. You know, if you ever, I don't know if you've ever had to have a difficult conversation, but it's always easier when you're outside, you know, whether it's on the phone or with someone face to face. I always find it much easier than if you're in a oppressive room. So yeah, just being able to talk, having that space to discuss things, um, that all really helps. And for the patients specifically, you know, having their visits outside in the garden so that their family members and their loved ones can come and see them in the garden rather than by the hospital bed, which would be a completely different experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, it definitely makes sense for them to be sent to the garden, and I think that's another importance of like green spaces. I mean, I guess that green space is more intentional. It's like the hospital is like, hey, we need this green space for patients, but I guess cities, when it comes to city planning, it does need to look more into that, where it's like more intentional green spaces to facilitate having people being able to sit and, as you said, have conversations
Mm.
and just be present in nature, present in the space. And I mean, I know London is pretty green. How would you rate London's green space edge, like, versus what would be optimal then
I think
for a city?
I think that London is great for parks, and we're really lucky. We have lots of big parks here. The majority are open all day, and they're usually really well maintained and safe. We're lucky to have that here. But I think most nice green spaces are found in the more affluent areas of London, and that is where people already have access. They may have their own garden, and their streets are usually lined with trees. And what we really need is green spaces in urban areas that are deprived, really, and need that. The people that live there will be under more anxiety, more stress because of their situation, their living situation, and that's really where we need the most green spaces. And also a lot of new developments, they have to have a certain amount of green space when they build a new development, but that green space is then privately owned by them in a lot of cases, so they can, whenever they want, kick people off. They often have security walking around, and if you're, say, having a picnic, they won't allow that, or they might move you on, or it's closed after a certain time, so it's not really full access. So it's so important. And
I found out a lot with the closing time thing. I mean, I guess that's also for some safety reasons too, but it does get annoying because the time is inconvenient. Sometimes you just want to
yeah,
be in a nice, relaxing environment, a nice, open green space, but it's just
exactly.
closed. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and nature is a human right, and so we should all be able to have access to nature. Um, and yeah, there needs to be more access for people that are living in very urban areas that are like concrete jungles, basically. We need more green space in those areas.
yeah, definitely. Have you ever been to New York?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, other than Central Park, which I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
it's huge,
very,
but just very concrete, very
yeah.
nothing around. Where did I go that was just very bad? I think it was Milan. Milan was another one that was just like not
Mhm.
bad. No, and you should definitely definitely do a bit better. But yeah, I think like being from Jamaica and coming here to London, I think London does a pretty okay
I was
job
gonna
of
say, like, what's it like in Jamaica? Then there'd be parks there.
in Jamaica. Let me tell you what, Jamaica, there's just a lot of, I don't think it's intentional, but there's a lot of green spaces there.
Mm.
So we are just used to seeing a lot of greenery, in a lot of our cities. It's like you have the city and then you just have like a plot of green land.
Yeah.
And also be tied to the fact there's not a huge amount of certain types of development yet, which the yet is very sad because that they might remove it. But for now, there's a lot of green space.
Mm.
So like we as a people, we're just used to seeing green spaces. So especially when you move to somewhere else and there's just not as much, you find that there's a lot of that kind of homesick feeling coming on, and then that mental effect happening because it's like we used to seeing water a lot, we used to seeing trees a lot, we used to seeing a lot of nature, we used to seeing sun a lot.
Yeah.
Coming to coming to London, it was like gray skies all the time. Literally, it was like a filter. I just came and the place was great. I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But right now the weather isn't too bad, so
It's
I'm getting
good now.
it's
Yeah. Well, there's raining today.
it's raining today though. But I like the rain today. I'm not gonna lie because
We needed it. The
it's
plants definitely need it. It'll be less watering for me tomorrow.
exactly right. that too, and inside was getting hot, so
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah,
But
but
you know, like my grandparents live in St. Lucia, and I was there in March, and so it's I hear what you're saying. Like the climate is always good, so you can always walk. You've got easy access to beaches, and you know, like the across their road they had a plot of land which is just green and like with mango trees and stuff. So like the environment there is just generally more green, and they've got hills with green, you know, tropical plants growing all over them. So that I think that's like a big reason why people feel so, you know, much better there, because you do see that greenery and you do feel very connected to nature. I definitely felt it when I was there, and I think in the city in London it's really easy, like I said, to lose that, and you're constantly in artificial spaces basically. And it's really important that we get out of that and go and visit parks and beaches and whatever we can see, because water is really important. Actually, water has a very calming effect, and so our garden has two water features because of the sound, and the sight of water is very calming.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad that you said the hills and the mountains thing, because I obviously just living there, you're not looking at the mountains, you're not looking at the hills to be like, okay, or anything. It's just there. But I remember when I went to America for like, not really the first time, but I went to America in like 2012. I was just looking around, I'm realizing I'm not seeing any mountains. It was just so weird. And
Yeah,
then moving here now to live here, I realized that that's one thing I actually miss just in the horizon, always having mountains or so. And that that's one thing I missed. I never even thought I'd miss, you know, just seeing mountains and, as you say, just more greenery and so on. And I think, yes, as you said, that's probably why, I mean, in certain instances, Caribbean people might be a bit more chillaxed in some way, you know, because we're just around greenery. And it's just crazy how probably like on the road there's like a tree growing, like a mango tree or some type of tree. And if you're hungry, you can just pick something, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
and so on. But unlike here where it's everything is, as you said, artificial, even the green spaces were made, you know,
yeah, yeah.
definitely.
There's no truly wild spaces really. There's like a few pockets that are, you know, if you go to Richmond Park, for example, you could go there and you feel like you're in the countryside. Or if you go to Hampstead Heath, which is really close to me, that feels like wild woods. But apart from those like massive parks, a lot of the parks are very maintained and very kind of, yeah, artificial, I guess.
Artificial and just flat. Um, seeing Delando saying development in Jamaica doesn't consider green spaces though. All right, development in Jamaica is not considering green spaces though. Which I mean, as I was saying, like I think the reason there's a lot of green spaces currently is because there's not any development of a certain kind
Mm.
yet. Which again, because you know they're not thinking about it. Even the other day, there was like this thing. I think they were mining bauxite or something, and they just took a whole chunk out of one of the mountains, and it just left this ugly scar, and everyone was protesting it. And the thing is, the government didn't even take into consideration
Mm.
how the people, how the residents live there. There was a river nearby, and it was just polluted for months because of that, and it was
So
just
cool.
crazy. So yeah, the Jamaican government is not considering green spaces, which is sad, and that's another thing too, that I think there should be more regulations put in place
Oh,
for
definitely.
green
Yeah.
spaces. I think you even said that here in London, like certain developments need a certain amount of green space, which I definitely don't think Jamaica has.
Yeah, I mean that is it is a good thing that they do have to do that, but again, it's all about access, and that green space could be on a rooftop, you know, that no one else can access. So it's like, what is that? What is that green space? Well, it could be a green wall on the building. That's not quite the same as like having a park or. So I think, you know, people do the development companies do find ways around it. But also like the councils, you know, the councils need to do better here in London at like not spraying pesticides, you know, to kill weeds off. Like we don't need to be doing that. And um, you know, in certain areas they'll cut trees down because they're creating a mess or they're like hazardous, but then they might not replace them or replace them with trees and then never water them and then they just die. So I see that happening a lot. So I think, you know, there definitely can be improvements there.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. And as you said, with the access, not everyone can access it, and the type of green space that it is. Because, as you said, I do see it where there's the green spaces are found in more in the affluent areas, and then other areas it's just a concrete jungle, and you're not
Mm.
having the people who probably truly need a little relief of natural space, they're not getting that.
Yeah.
So Tim Crowley is saying, what do you recommend for persons who live in density spaces to create their own green space?
I would say, like, if you have, it depends, I guess. If you have a balcony, you could create a really nice little balcony oasis, and you could have grasses, plants that have a lot of movement, and plants that are scented, so you can sit out in the evening and enjoy that. So yeah, if you've got a balcony, that's great. You could definitely create like a really lush garden with bamboos and grasses, and create that effect of height. That would be really important, and also so that you feel secluded. So like have a chair with plants around it, so you can kind of tuck yourself away, because that's a really nice feeling to be able to feel cocooned by nature. And if you don't have any access to, a garden, or you don't have a balcony, then I would say, have houseplants, because they can really help improve your well-being as well. Just having greenery in your room, not only do they improve air quality, but just like looking at a houseplant, taking care of a houseplant, that can be really therapeutic. And having that routine of watering, it all gives you something to kind of ground yourself with nature. So that's something easy you can do in your house. But also, you can grow, like I said before, vegetables on your windowsill. You can grow herbs. You can grow salad crops, sow salad crops, and have microgreens and add them to your salads and your foods that are like high in nutrition. So yeah, there's lots of things you could do. I'd say, if you don't have a garden, probably houseplants is your best route to go down.
Great, thank you for that one. And just riding that wave into the next point that he was asking, what do you recommend for people who are notorious for murdering plants, or people who can't they have the plants and they want to have the plants, but they probably can't really take care of the plants that well? What would you recommend for them?
Well, there's a plant called cast iron plant. It's called that for a reason, because you can't kill it. And its Latin name is aspidistra. So yeah, you can use that plant. It's a green leafy plant, and it's very hard to kill. It tolerates shade. You can put it in full sun, and if you forget to water it, it will forgive you. It won't die on you. So cast iron plant is probably the best for you if you're a plant murderer. And if you could also use snake plant, sansevieria. So they're really good plants, and they're nice. They come in like different shades of green. You can get variegated ones, and I've got a few here, and they do really well. Like, I give them very little attention, to be honest. And spider plants as well. Spider plants are really good, and they're really good for air quality. So yeah, I have one by the window, and I just kind of hope that it captures all the pollution when I've got the windows open. But I don't know. I just think I'm just fooling myself. But there we go.
What plants, though, if you can think of any, are probably the easiest to just die as soon as you turn your back? They just die.
Which plants?
Yeah, if you can think of any.
There's a plant that everyone gets at Christmas, which is poinsettia.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen those. They have the red leaves.
I don't know.
That is like notorious for just dropping dead as soon as you get home, because they're really tender, and they're actually from Mexico.
Yeah.
So people take them from the supermarket or garden center and like carry them home in the freezing cold wind, and then by the time they got it home, it's got like one leaf left on it. It's looking really disheveled. So yeah, I wouldn't. If you're gonna get one of those, like, bring a blanket to take it home in, because they really don't like the cold. But I used to see all the time, like, I used to work at a garden center when I was younger. And there, like, yeah, people would be taking houseplants home, and I'd always like try and wrap them up for them, because houseplants, if you're transporting them during winter, they will hate the cold winds. So yeah, poinsettias I would avoid.
Someone says stay away from calathea. Do you know?
Yeah. I've got two of those, and they do surprisingly well. But they're also known to be super fussy and just drop dead for no apparent reason. So yeah, probably stay away from them. They like it quite humid, and they don't like full sun. They like they would normally grow on the forest floor, so they want a dappled light. But that, if you research your plant before you buy it, like, don't just pick up a plant because it looks nice. like research it, find out where it's from. Like in nature, where would it grow? Is it a forest floor dweller? Or does it grow up in the canopies? Does it want lots of light? And it will give you an idea of what, you know, what you should be buying.
Right. Thank you for that. Before you go though, I just want to ask you really quickly because you said you worked at Garden when you were younger. How long have you actually had for for gardening and
uh,
just plants?
it's been 87 years. No, it's been since I
Years.
was like I started working at a garden center when I was 16,
Oh no.
and I'm 35 now, so pretty much all my working life I've been working in gardens. But I didn't start with the intention of becoming a gardener. I just took the job as a weekend job. My aunt was working there. So I took the job and I got moved to the plant area outside to work with the plants, and then started really enjoying it. I mean, I always loved nature, so it made sense that, you know, I would enjoy that working with plants. And, you know, looking after them, I learned more about where plants should be, which plants, you know, for which situation. Started to talk to customers and like recommend plants, and I just really got into it. And then from then I like decided I wanted to start doing my studies. So I did my like RHS course, and then I went on to do a diploma at Kew Gardens in West London. So it's a big botanic garden, and that was kind of like that really kickstarted my career really in horticulture. And then yeah, I've been doing all sorts since then. I went to America for a year to work in Pennsylvania at Longwood Gardens, which is a big public garden there. I've been to Sicily to work there for a year in a cooking school where I was growing vegetables for the kitchen and teaching people how to grow vegetables, like farm to table ethics. And yeah, and then I was head gardener at Strawberry Hill House in Twickenham for 3 years, and now I'm at this job. It's coming up 3 years now. So yeah, I've been doing all sorts and been doing more media stuff, which has been fun. So I'm a panelist on Gardener's Question Time on BBC Radio 4.
Nice.
So you often hear me on there. And yeah, I've got other bits and bobs coming up. So yeah, I love horticulture because it's so varied and you never stop learning. So like you'll always see a plant you've never seen before or learn a new technique of a way to do something.
Which I think
So that's what I love.
it's just new.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. But yeah, anyway, thank you so much for coming on, Ashley, and sharing ways nature can impact self-care. You know, you talk about the physical, mental, all that good stuff. Thank you so much for stopping by on Father's Day. You probably wanted to be here otherwise, but thank you so much. Hey,
It's been great.
yeah, but if anyone missed the live, don't worry, this app is gonna go up. So yeah, don't worry. Have a great rest of your Father's Day,
Great.
Ashley, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks. Yeah, have a good one. Thanks for having me.